What's up, y'all? I want to talk about James Harden. He finally got traded to the Brooklyn Nets. It was speculative that early in the year that's where he wanted to go. Kevin Durant wanted him to be there, so I knew eventually he was going to get there. I didn't know when they were going to do it. I know the Houston Rockets were trying to get other teams involved because with a trade like that, you got to get three or four teams in. You know what I'm saying? And the Brooklyn Nets traded um, Karis LeVert, my guy with the fro. I forget his name. I always forget his name. They traded him. They traded Karis LeVert to, I believe he went to the Pacers, and Victor Oladipo went to Houston. And I believe Houston Rockets got like about six number one draft picks or some crazy number like that. So the Houston Rockets got some things out of the deal. The Houston Rockets still got a pretty good team. They got Woods. They got John Wall. DeMarcus Cousins looked like he's coming back from that injury, and he's doing pretty good. And they still have Aaron Gordon on that team, so they still have some good players on that team, some good pieces on that team. It's not the Obviously it's not the team that it was a couple years ago, but James Harden, to me, James Harden is I wouldn't have trade. I mean, look, he's a great offensive player, and I understand why the Nets wanted him. Like I said earlier, I did a video earlier and said I wouldn't have traded for him. I gave my reasons why. I thought the Nets had a rounded team, and this is before Dinwiddie got hurt. That they had Karis LeVert, Dinwiddie, Kyrie Irving, and Kevin Durant. All four of those guys can get their own shot at a high level, and then they still had two very good big men, and they had Taurean Prince and Jeff Green. They had some defensive players on that team, and I just thought it was a real-rounded team. I didn't think they needed James Harden because I knew to get James Harden, they was going to have to strip away a lot of players. If Dinwiddie wasn't hurt, he would have been gone too. But it's just he was hurt, and you can't trade an injured player. I know in the NFL you can't trade an injured player. I believe in the NBA it's the same thing. But nevertheless, James Harden just was a despicable man. The man came in out of shape. The man had a belly. Last year, he lost a lot of weight, was in shape. This year, he come in with a belly because he wants to get traded. Now, he said yesterday at the podium, I believe that was yesterday at the podium, that he did everything he could do for the Houston Rockets, and the team is not that good and all that. He should have started with himself and said he wasn't that good, because the first game he came back, I believe he scored like almost 40 points or something like that, and then he gradually tailed off to the point to where he really wasn't giving a lot of effort that we know James Harden gives, at least on offense. But James Harden, the Houston Rockets gave James Harden at least it was like a 5-year window where they were highly, highly, highly competitive. It was a 3-year window where they were like a championship type team. He had Dwight Howard. When they got Dwight Howard from the Lakers, because Dwight Howard didn't sign with the Lakers, so Houston went out and got him. James Harden couldn't get along with Dwight Howard. Okay, they went out and got Chris Paul. They took the Golden State Warriors to the Game 7, even though Chris Paul was hurt. But they had Game 7 in their house. They missed 21 straight threes, and James Harden didn't play well. Now, see, I'm gonna show you how this is a trail. Then he doesn't like Chris Paul. So they bring in him, and Chris Paul don't get along. So the common denominator right now is James Harden, because James Harden is still the same person that's there. They bring in Russell Westbrook from Oklahoma City Thunder, the triple-double king of this era. Him and Russell Westbrook fall out on the court, at least on the court. I don't know, off the court, they say they still friends, but on the court, they didn't like playing with each other. Okay, so who's the common denominator in this whole thing is James Harden. James Harden is the problem. I remember a couple years back, well, probably like 3 years back, 4 years back, they played San Antonio. They had, I believe it was Game 7 between them and San Antonio. Kawhi Leonard was hurt. He couldn't play Game 7. What did James Harden do? Not play well. I believe he scored like 15, 16 points, somewhere up in there. And then at the end of the game, it was photos of him at the strip club. James Harden has an affinity for the strip club. It's cool. He can do what he want to do on his off time. But the optics on how it looks when you lose a game 7, and I believe game 7 was at Houston. If I'm not mistaken, somebody can correct me on that. You at the strip club. And it seemed like they can't get you at the strip club. And then I was listening to Doug Gottlieb, and he said largely the reason why Oklahoma City moved on from James Harden, it wasn't because they didn't want to pay him. It was because in the NBA Finals against the Miami Heat, James Harden wasn't playing well, and he was going to the strip club every night. And they told him, can he stop going to the strip club? And he kept, and he didn't play well. I remember him not playing well in that series. He was a young player, you know what I'm saying? I believe James Harden at that time was like 21, 22. So I really I really didn't get on him about that. He's a young player. He's going to get better. First time in the NBA, first time and that deep in the playoffs. They had the NBA Finals. All them guys was young. Russell Westbrook, Kevin Durant, all them guys was young. But now, it comes out that he wasn't focused. So James Harden has a focus problem. And it seems like when the game get greater and the pressure gets greater, James Harden folds. It seems like James Harden to me is a front runner. When everything is going well, he's dropping threes on your head. He's making you fall, crossing you over, step back, traveling step back. I call it a traveling step back. He hitting them threes on your head. He mixing it up in his hand, mixing the mixer up and all that stuff. He's fine. But as soon as adversity hit, see, that's why you got to see when the adversity hit. You got to see how people really react when adversity hit. You know what I'm saying? This is going to go on his legacy. He quit on the team. He quit on the team. That's what James Harden did. He quit on the team. This is going to be part of his legacy. Now he got to go to New Jersey. He has to win the title at New Jersey. Like, it's a lot of pressure on James Harden to win the title at New Jersey because Kyrie already won a title. Kevin Durant got 2. The pressure is James Harden. He has to come in, and him and Kyrie, they both going to have to kind of change their games up a little bit because both of those guys need the ball in their hand, and they love having the ball in their hand to be effective. They both love to dribble. I don't know how that's going to work. Kevin Durant, on the other hand, he showed that he could play without the ball. He can show you he can play with the ball. So I'm not worried about Kevin Durant. I'm worried about Kyrie and James Harden in the pecking order because I know Kevin Durant is the number one option on that team. Now, James Harden and Kyrie is going to be fighting for number 1, number 2, number 3. Who's going to be number 2 is going to be number 3 because each one of those guys, even though each one of those guys are superstars in their own right, each one of those guys, Kyrie is a borderline superstar. Each one of those guys, him and James Harden are borderline superstars. But you know what I mean? They're very, very good players, great players. Each one of those guys will have to have a defined role. When you bring 3 big egos like that in a room, and each one of them has success, James Harden won scoring titles, MVP, Kyrie hit the game big shot in Game 7 against Golden State, and we know Kevin Durant is Kevin Durant. You know what I'm saying? He won 2 Finals MVPs with Golden State, 2 titles. So these guys are going to have the pecking order to have success. Now their team is watered down, a little bit more watered down than it was. Now in the East, I still think they can come out the East because those 3 guys. The one thing about having 3 great players on your team like that, you can always have one of those guys on the floor at all times. Like, they all start, but then you rest 2, you play 1, continue playing 1, you rest 2, then you bring the other one in, you rest the one that stayed on the floor. So they can always have a scoring threat on the floor at all times. That's what it gives them. But they have a lesser bench. So neither one of those guys can sustain an injury. If any one of those guys sustain an injury for a long period of time, then they're going to struggle. But long as those guys stay healthy, they got a chance to come out the East. I don't know if they're gonna win the whole thing. It will have to map out. They're gonna need another big man. You know what I'm saying? But because Jared Allen, that's his name with the fro, Jared Allen. They traded Jared Allen, who I'm very high on Jared Allen. He's a shot blocker. The guy, he can roll to the basket. He can run the floor. He was young. I believe Jared Allen was 22, 23 himself. So he was a young guy that got DeAndre Jordan a little bit longer in the tooth. So I don't know how that's going to work. But DeAndre Jordan still has something left. But he is longer in the tooth because he was virtually kind of out of the rotation. He started off the year starting getting like 20-something minutes, and then all of a sudden, as the game started going on, he started getting less and less minutes. The last 3 or 4 games before yesterday, he was getting like 9, 4, 6, somewhere up in there, like single-digit minutes. So, we'll have to see what happens. But James Harden, the pressure's on James Harden. He has to go there and fit in without incident, without any dust ups or anything. He's going to have to set the third reel, being the third wheel, because Kyrie Irving, he's going to want the second. He's going to want to be the second banana. And then that's another thing with Kyrie Irving, his situation. I'm talking about that in another video. But James Harden's going to he's going to have to accept being the third wheel. Let me know what y'all think about James Harden and his situation. I'm out.